Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
Hey, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Nick. I'm your host, and it's episode 76. And in this episode, I talk with my friend, Kathie Phillips. Kathie's a children's pastor right here in the area where I live at a church that's about 20 minutes away. And Kathie and I talk about her new book, which is a book full of activities specific for kids in children's ministry or in homeschool groups or Christian schools, whatever it might be. So we talk about that, but then we also talk about what Kathie is learning as a leader. So we talk about her book first, but then we dive into these things, these learnings that Kathie has been thinking about as a leader with a lot of experience serving in ministry. And when she goes through them, I just think, wow, these are the most important things that oftentimes we totally neglect. Maybe that's just me. I don't know if that's you, but it might just be me. But she goes through that list, and as she does, I think, man, I definitely struggle with some of these, and it's easy to push some of this aside. So it's a good reminder for me, and I hope it will be for you as well, regardless of what role you serve in. Before we jump into that interview, just want to give you a heads up. As always, you can get all the links and notes and everything in the show notes at nickblevins.com/episode 76. If you have not left a rating and a review on iTunes, I would appreciate that greatly. That really helps with the podcast and getting it in front of other leaders. I would also love to hear who you would like to have or hear from on the podcast. Is there some leader in children's ministry, student ministry, next gen pastor? Is there a resource or something that you would love to hear somebody come on the podcast and talk about because you're interested in, or maybe they're doing something unique at their church? I really love talking to folks when they're doing something very specific in ministry, and then we can dive into that. That would be helpful. So if you know of that, email me, nick@nickblevins.com. If you can leave a rating and review on iTunes, I'd appreciate that. All of that really helps. So I'd love to hear from you. Let me know. But let's go ahead now and jump into my interview with Kathie about her new book and what she's learning lately as a leader. Well, today I'm joined by my friend, Kathie Phillips. Welcome to the podcast, Kathie.
Thank you, Nick, for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us, and I'd love for you to introduce yourself to everyone. Obviously, we know each other because we serve in the same city, right? Like 20 minutes apart or something like that, different churches. But go ahead and introduce yourself and your family and your church to everyone listening.
Sure. I'm Kathie Phillips, and I'm the Director of Children's Ministry at Central Presbyterian Church in Baltimore. There I oversee ministry from birth through fifth grade, and I'm really excited about what we're doing and how we are coming alongside parents to disciple their kids and doing our part at church to disciple them. And I'm also wife to Lance. We're celebrating 22 years of marriage next month. And we have 2 adult children. Our son Daniel is 21, and our daughter Kennedy, she's a freshman in college this year. She is 18. So we are no longer raising children in our house.
But you're probably still raising them out of the house to an extent, right? That's what I hear. Like I hear it never ends. Is that true? Or
it never ends. The relationship changes, but in a good way, I've found.
That's great.
That the relationship changes.
I always love how you, when you like put on Instagram or something about your kids, you say my favorite son and my favorite daughter.
Yes.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's easy to do when you have one of each.
Yeah,
you
that's
can
right.
label them that way.
That's right. Very damaging otherwise, obviously. The Bible would suggest, but very fun if that's your case. That's awesome. I love it. So, Kathie, you're a published author now. Like,
I am.
How crazy is that? So tell us about your new book, and then I also want to hear about how it came about. But tell us about the book.
So my book is called Top 50 Object Lessons. The first half of the book is 50 topical object lessons on things like anger, faith, friendship, your relationship with God, those kind of things. And then we have bonus object lessons in the book. There are 50 of those. Those are items that you can use from the dollar store. They're candy themed, holiday themed, games that kids play with, toys. So a lot of different kinds of topics that are covered in the book. So there are more than 50, even though the topic says 50.
Wow.
The title says 50. Yes.
Yeah, it does. I was just looking at the cover again, and like I didn't see where it indicated that there's even more. You know what I mean?
Yes. So there are bonus lessons, very practical bonus lessons. It was important to me that the book be written from a very practical standpoint, using things that you likely already had in your resource room or at home, or could get your hands on pretty easily.
Now, it's for kids, but is there a specific age range you would say that is kind of geared towards, or what would that be like?
I would say elementary age, although some of them could be altered to preschool age. So I have heard back from teachers in Christian schools who are using it in their classroom, as well as preschool friends of mine who are using it, friends of mine who are using it outside of a church or school context with their grandkids. So it can be adapted to preschoolers, but the target age is elementary.
Great. Now, I know there are some people listening who have written a book. Probably not that many. But I know there are probably some listening who have thought, I would like to. And maybe it's a different kind of book. Maybe it's something like this, like a resource type of book for ministry. How did it come about for you? How did this all, start? And how did you get to the point where you ended up writing this book?
Well, I will give a disclaimer that I had always dreamed of writing a book, but way down the road. I like to read books, and I don't feel like I have a lot of time in my schedule now to actually read books. So the thought of actually writing one seemed way, way down the road. But one day I opened up my email, and there was an email message from a publisher representative who approached me about a project that they had wanted me to be a part of. And the way that I was thinking at the time when I was reading the email was that I was being invited to be part of a collaborative group project. And I thought, well, that'll be fun to collaborate with some other people. And I even typed that back in my response, yes, I'm interested. I would love to collaborate with others. And I got an email message back saying, no, this would be your project. So that took a little bit of a different turn. It went from excitement to fear and dread of, I've never done this before. I don't know how to write a book. What would I write about? But I felt like God was saying, this is your time to do this. You are ready. And so I did it afraid and very naive, not knowing what to do. But I studied, I read a lot of things on how to organize myself through the writing process. And I talked to friends who had written books, so they gave me a lot of great advice and tips for that. So that's how it came about. It was just, a God gift to me. Over email, a friend of mine had recommended me to the publisher to be part of this project. So I'm thankful to her for recommending me to do the project.
That's awesome. What's the best way for a children's ministry leader to use it? I mean, I think I know, but as the author, I think it'd be better to hear from you.
Sure. So it's primarily designed, I think, to be best used in a Sunday school setting or midweek programming setting or Christian educator setting or even homeschool setting to supplement a lesson or to provide some kind of hands-on learning experience for the kids. So anytime you're looking for them to go deeper with something or to make a particular Bible story maybe more relevant to them and what they are experiencing, I think is the best way to use it. But like I said, it's written from a very practical standpoint to be able to use in a lot of different settings. So not just necessarily a ministry setting, but a homeschool or Christian school environment as well.
Yeah, and topic-based, which means you can figure, if you know what you want to teach on, you use it as a resource that way, right?
Yes, so you can use it that way. And then each object lesson comes with discussion questions to get the kids feedback on it. And it also comes with 3 different Bible stories or scripture passages that could also go with that particular object lesson. So you can get 4 uses out of each one.
Great. And we'll link to that in the show notes as well. And the other thing we don't talk about, so we're going to shift gears a little bit, is what you are learning lately as a leader. Because I ask everyone, pretty much everyone who comes on the podcast, what they would like to talk about. Because I love for people to talk about something they're passionate about, something they're working on or whatever. And this is what you said. You said you're learning a lot as a leader, and this be something to talk about. So, and you sent me kind of a preview of what they are, which I think it's great. So what are some of these things that you're learning lately as a leader?
So as I have been in children's ministry for a good while now, as a full-time staff person, it's been 11 years staff, but over 25 altogether for children's ministry. And I feel like as a leader for myself, it is important for me to continue to learn, to study my craft, and to stay on top of trends and things like that. But then also looking for ways that God is teaching me personally how to be a better leader. So I sent you 4 things that God is teaching me. And the first one that I mentioned was about the importance of rest. Yeah. And these are not in any particular order, but that's one of the lessons that I have learned over the years, the importance of honoring my sabbatical, my day off, actually having a day off and not checking email, as tempting as that is, but protecting my time to be refreshed and renewed before the upcoming weekend. So my days off are towards the end of the week. And so that helps me to really go into our weekend programming ready to go.
Now, what did you do like in the past? How did you not honor that? And how have you gotten, better at it? Because I think a lot of us wrestle with that.
Yes.
Because it's easy for ministry to seep into all areas of life in some ways.
Yes.
So
very easy.
How did you manage that?
Well, in the early part of my ministry career, I worked from home. So that was really tough to be able to separate ministry work from home and family life. And it was really hard. And especially when I loved what I did. So it didn't feel like work to me. So it actually energized me and got me excited. But I realized that there was a point where there were other things in my life that were being neglected, whether it was relationships with friends or just my own ability to be able to rest and enjoy things that I like, such as reading and trying new recipes and things like that. So when I realized that I was not able to enjoy things that made me happy outside of the ministry world is when my perspective on that changed.
Okay. So that was a big indicator. It's like you're doing these other things, but you couldn't enjoy them. That's something to think about for anybody listening. Like, is that, is anybody there right now where it's like, this is what I love to do, but lately I don't love it. That might be a sign. Yeah.
And it's a dangerous thing, especially when your ministry work doesn't feel like work, where it's enjoyable, where you're reading things and you are online and you're Googling things or pinning things on Pinterest or whatever. Like, that's still work, even though it may not feel like work. So really putting that to the side and doing things that really refresh you personally is very important.
I know, a lot of people do a lot of similar things for rest and sabbatical and take their day off and different things like that. But I know different folks have things that kind of refuel them. Is your best thing just that day off where you really disconnect, or is it an activity, or is it something else?
It is just disconnecting. On Thursday evenings, I look forward to my Fridays off. I look forward to going to get me my favorite coffee and just sitting with a book that is not necessarily ministry related. Often, or a magazine, or having lunch with a friend, or just doing nothing is very refreshing to me. And years ago, I had read a book called The Best Yes by Lisa Turkhurst. And the book talked about saving your yes for the best yes, and learning how to say no so that you could say yes to the better thing. And so that was really a great perspective for me personally, as well as ministry-wise, and learning that it's okay to say no to things so that you can say yes to the better thing.
That's good. Yep, I definitely know of that. That's a great point and philosophy, because we do say yes to a lot of things that aren't great and take away from other things, right, that are great. That's true.
Yeah, we have to see our own self-care as the better thing at times. So that will help us to stay in ministry for the long haul if we really preserve our self-care.
So what's another thing? What's one of the other things that you've been learning lately as a leader?
So now that my kids are grown, I look back at how they were integrated into my ministry world and how important it was for me. This kind of goes along with the rest part of it, but being able to separate ministry life to preserve my family time and to let them know that no matter what, they were my first ministry. So what that looked like, especially when they were younger, but in their early teens, was not volunteering to sign them up to serve at things at church just because they were my kids. So respecting their time and their space as well. So not committing them to things, but also allowing them to serve where they are gifted, and having them pull out of ministry service if that wasn't where they felt God calling them. So allowing them to be able to find their own sweet spot in serving was really important in their spiritual development, so much so that now that they want to serve, they love to serve. I think because I was intentional about that when they were younger.
Because they chose it. Yeah.
Yes.
And they're doing things they like, things they're passionate about.
They are. Yeah. So my son, for example, he loves student ministry. Now, that's not really my thing. I like elementary and younger, but he loves teenagers. And so that's where he is passionate about. And he has been able to serve there and also pick up on some ministry lessons and things as a result of serving alongside me when he was younger. So that's been a beautiful thing as a mom to see for both of them.
Yeah, definitely. Now, would you say, because you've had that experience now with them at different ages and all of that, was it harder at different ages to make your family your number one ministry because of the age they were, or is it just different? I mean, how did that work?
Well, I think that one of the great benefits for me was transitioning into ministry from being a stay-at-home mom. I had been a stay-at-home mom for 10 years before I took on a paid children's ministry position. And that first position, I worked from home. So I was able to integrate that. It wasn't really a hard transition from being at home to now not being at home. So it was just kind of a slow, rather smooth integration that I think really set that up for success.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. And then you did move to a job where you didn't work from home at some point. How old were they then? Right.
I did. So that was 6.5 years ago. So they were 15 and 12 at the time. Okay. So they were older when that happened. So, but I still had the flexibility of being able to take them to school, to pick them up, to still serve as a room mom, to go in for class parties and special chapel programs and things like that. So I was still able to be a part of their education, even though my role at home had changed. So that was important to me when I accepted both ministry positions that I've taken paid. Is that was part of it, that I still needed to have that flexibility with my kids.
Yeah. It's interesting because the culture we live in now, even in the business world, a lot of workplaces are far more flexible than they ever were before. Like my wife's work's totally flexible with our family and schedules and things like that. But that was always one of the great benefits of church is most churches I knew. And when I was growing up, the staff at my church, you had a big time flexible schedule, which was important because as a pastor on staff, you also were on call a lot too,
Right,
so there were plenty of things that weren't so great, but that was one of the things that was great is that flexibility allowed you to just, be in your kids' lives and show up at their field trips and things like that. That was harder for sure back. I don't know if it's as true now. I'm sure it's true for many, but it was harder with schedules and other jobs back then. So that's a plus for sure.
Yeah, that was something that was really a non-negotiable for me to be able to still be able to do those things for them. So
that's good. And you talked about it in the hiring process, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good tip for people listening, in case they ever change jobs or start a new job or something like that.
Yeah.
So what's another thing that you've been learning lately as a leader?
So one of the greatest gifts that I've been given as a ministry leader is having a network of support from other ministry leaders. And I would strongly encourage other ministry leaders, if you are not part of a network system of support, that you get one. And don't be afraid to start one if there is not one that currently exists. So you and I, Nick, met through a local network of children's ministry leaders around the Baltimore area. And I've also had the privilege of connecting with other people from conferences that I've met. And we are all spread out about the country. So we keep in touch over social media and texting. We're able to send prayer requests for ministry and family. We've been able to support each other with challenges and things like that. It has been an incredible and valuable gift to me to have a network of support. So again, if you don't have that, don't be afraid to reach out to leaders that maybe you're connected with on social media or maybe even in a local setting from churches around your area. I would strongly, strongly encourage that.
A lot of people think starting a network or something like that is really hard, but it's really not. Like our network was really just emails going around. Hey,
yes,
let's meet here. Another church hosted, if I remember correctly, it was Hunt Valley Church near us, right? I think hosted the first one. And so like people, I think this is true all over. Even when I go to conferences, they want to network and they'll do whatever. They'll host, they'll show, whatever they got to do, pitch in. And so I think people look at it like it's this huge daunting thing. And I'm like, nah, it's pretty easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you email each other and pick a date and a place and organize lunch or something, I mean, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, you can get a place, you can gather at somebody's church or maybe at a restaurant or coffee shop. You can brown bag lunch, but just to get together and just talk about what's going on in your ministry and just share ideas. Some of my best ideas have come from these network of friends. And we were able to, because of this network over the spring, you led us in a local children's ministry conference. Using some of the giftedness from leaders in our network. So it's been a great, great way to connect with people and continue to learn. So.
Yeah, and that conference, I mean, for basically a one-day conference for volunteers was, like you said, put together totally from the network. And granted, it's a lot harder than just gathering together with other people, but it was not that hard. You know what I mean? It was totally something, churches, a network could do. And it, obviously, this wasn't the first thing. I know of people in other areas of the country that have done the same thing. And so I think there's a lot of benefits to networks. Now, that's one network you mentioned, but you're also networked with people from conferences that you go to, and you've spoken at like Groups Kidmin, and you'll be at CPC again this year. When you're there, because I think this would help people. So when you're there, practically, how do you make that work? Because some people are like extroverts, and they're like, no problem. Like, I'm going to get to know as many people as possible. Some people are not, so they're thinking, I've been to conferences. I didn't really get to know anybody. Like, how do you do it?
I would fall in the category of being an introvert. So I am not a very outgoing person, but I love connecting with people and I love talking about children's ministry. So those two loves came together at the first Kidmin Conference put on by Group years ago, where I went to the conference by myself, didn't know a soul, But that is where I made those connections for the network that I'm a part of now, 6 years later. So I just took a risk and started talking to people, and we exchanged contact information, and it just grew from there. But if you are not the extrovert type of person, and maybe you connect with people on social media and you know that they're going to the Orange Conference or CPC, send them a message saying, hey, I would love to get together for coffee, or maybe we could get together for lunch, and just start that way. Is another great way to connect with people. So don't be afraid to reach out to those, especially people that you admire and want to learn from.
Yeah, I didn't think about that again until you just said that. But many of the friends that I've made at conferences, the first contact was through Twitter or an email or something, which if you're an introvert is way easier, obviously.
Right.
And
right.
I'm an introvert as well. I just play an extrovert at conferences, just like you do. I just fake it at church too. Like I pretend like that at church, to connect with people and meet people. But, connecting through social media is so much easier. And then nowadays, you meet people and obviously don't really know each other, but you feel like you do a little bit. And some of that, that barrier, especially that you don't like as an introvert, is gone. But also if you just have, introduce yourself, ask about them, and you get a couple questions, about their ministry.
Right.
People love to talk, about their ministry. They love to hear about your ministry. So if you just have those few things, you're probably ready to go, to start networking with people.
Yeah, and even finding out things, resources that they use. What curriculum do you use, and what other conferences have you been to, and what breakouts are you attending, or what did you learn in that breakout? Just those are some easy ways to get conversation going, and get those connections built. Yep.
So what's the fourth thing that you're learning lately as a leader?
Yeah, so I mentioned that a lot of my learning as a leader took place as a result of building those network connections. But really, continuing to learn is very important to me. I don't feel like I have learned everything that I could learn, even though I have been in children's ministry for a long time. There's so many more things for me to learn. There are so many more resources out there available for us to continue learning and doing ministry in new and innovative ways. So not being afraid to learn. There are conferences and workshops and, like I mentioned, resources and blogs and things like that. There's even more ways to continue your education in a formal, informal setting. So this spring, I wrapped up a year of Kidmin Academy from Brian Frank. So I did that for a year. It was an online program that was rather vigorous. So I wasn't expecting it to really feel like school, but it did feel like school. So we had to buy textbooks, and we had to do the class online. We had to do interactions with our classmates and with our instructors. So it really did feel like school, but I learned so much that I was able to use in my ministry context. So definitely continue to learn through those venues. And I mentioned with the network, continue to learn from other leaders. They're a great, great resource.
Yep. I typically learn. I love to learn a bunch of different ways, but when you meet with other people and talk, I guess practically you're going to probably get more. It's not fair to say you would learn more, but practically you could maybe walk away with more that you could go do, than maybe just reading a book or whatever.
Yes. And just being encouraged too, to maybe think outside of the box a little bit more, or to go back to the table and examine why you do what you do, the ways that you do it. So I think that those kind of things can be very helpful in keeping ministries healthy and fresh. So yeah.
Now, some people, like I mentioned, they like to learn different ways. And you mentioned Kidmin Academy. And I think one thing worth noting too is if somebody listening is not necessarily like loves to read or loves to, has a hard time making the time to learn, the great thing about Kidmin Academy is you jumped in there, you paid for that program, and then there was accountability. So that might be something for people to think about is not get into something that's not just self-paced or self-learning. You know what I mean? Where
Right.
like, there is some accountability, some community.
Yes.
I think that could be really helpful too.
And even things like my network of friends, we are going to be reading a book together in November. So even those kind of things, kind of a book club type thing. And if you don't like to read per se, maybe you could listen to podcasts. So there are lots of different ways to continue learning.
Yeah, and if you don't like to read, but you're part of a book club that you love, you'll read. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's not like
yeah.
you're saying, I don't know, how much do you read in a month? Are you saying read a whole book, or is it more like a few chapters, or how does that work in your network?
Right. So we are reading Jessica Bieler and Gina McLean's new book, Don't Quit. So we are starting that. Everybody has ordered their book. So we are going to be reading the first couple of chapters and then talking about it over social media the first part of November. So that's one way that we are learning together, but we also went to a conference together recently. And we just learn from each other through somebody tossing out a question. What do you guys do about this? Or what have you heard or read about recently? Or what are you learning about this topic or whatever? So we learn from each other in those ways as well. Just somebody tossing out a question is a great way to learn as well.
Kathie, you didn't know it, but you just put in like a podcast tease there, because Gina and Jessica are going to be on the podcast here real soon.
Oh, great.
We're going to talk about that book. So that's fun.
So we're looking forward to reading that together.
That's awesome.
Is
there anything else that you want to mention that you're learning, or just any other thoughts you have for people that are listening?
I would say, just in closing, to continue to trust God for what He wants your ministry to be, and continue to rely on Him. It's so easy, at least for me, to run in my own strength and on my own abilities and my own gifts. But there are those challenging moments that come that remind me that it is not all about me. It's not for my glory, but it's for His. So just stay tuned into Him and bring Him into your ministry. Like, pray and ask Him for direction and for guidance on what to do, because it's for His glory ultimately.
You know, sometimes we get so busy we forget the most important part, right?
Yes. And it is in those challenging moments that I am reminded that I cannot do it in my own strength.
Well, Kathie, I really appreciate you taking the time. Before we wrap up, we'll link to the book, we'll link to your blog, but can you tell us about your blog and how people can connect with you if they have questions?
Sure. I have a blog that I started, I believe, in 2012. It was, again, kind of a test, kind of experiment. I thought that my husband and my mom would be the only people that read it. So I wrote it with the intention of giving it 3 months, because there were so many blogs already out there for children's ministry. And one piece of advice that I got from my mom, who is one of my biggest supporters, said, it's coming from your voice and your perspective. So no other blog can do that for you. So I started the blog again. I'm very practical. So I offer practical tips on what I'm learning, what I'm reading, what we're doing in our ministry. And I also review ministry resources and things. So it's a good mix of a lot of different things.
Yep. And it's kidminspiration.com.
Yes.
And we'll put that, people can figure out how to spell that, obviously, probably, but we'll put a link in the show notes as well.
Yes. Practical tips and inspiration. That's where the name came from.
Yep. And they can connect with you on social media. You'll be at the Children's Pastors Conference in January. Yes.
I will. I'm excited to go back again this year.
Yep. In Orlando. Not a bad place to be in January.
Yay. Yes.
Awesome.
I'm excited.
Leading some breakouts. That'll be fun.
Leading some breakouts, doing some coaching sessions. So I'm looking forward to that.
Cool. Well, Kathie, I appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing these things you're learning and your new book. Thanks for writing that. I hope it's really helpful. People will check that out and, plug that into what they're doing in their ministry or their school or with homeschooling, like you mentioned, all those uses for that. So thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Well, those are some good lessons from Kathie there. I don't know about you, but it's easy for me to overlook those important things that she mentioned. And we can't, right? We need to prioritize those things. And so I think one action item you could take coming out of this interview is to think about which one of the things she mentioned do you struggle with the most? And then this week and this month, what are the 2 things, 3 things that you're going to do to improve on that, to work on that? I think that would be really important. If you do serve in children's ministry or in some other environment, like she mentioned, homeschool, Christian school, where you think that activity book would be helpful for you, you can get that link in the show notes along with everything else at nickblevins.com/episode 76. In the next episode, I talk with Gina McLean and Jessica Beeler, like I mentioned in the conversation there with Kathie, about their new book, Don't Quit. You have probably been tempted at times to quit in ministry. It's hard, and there are things that come up. And so it's a great book, and even talks about a lot more than just the idea of sticking it out or, not quitting in ministry. There's just some real practical tools in there to help you as a leader. So we talk about that in the next interview. You don't want to miss that. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Hit the subscribe button if you want to make sure you get every episode. And until then, I hope you have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.